Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. We got a new raid this week with our Splash of Adventure event, and you all know what that means. Everyone gets a free unit. This time around, our welfare unit is an alt of an existing character, Estelle. For her summer variant, Estelle is water element and now wields a wand instead of a staff. She's a fantastic new adventurer, as we'll discuss in this video. You can learn more about Estelle's story by playing the raid and unlocking her mana circles. Her bio explains how Estelle is a stickler for the rules despite donning a cute swimsuit. One thing I enjoy about alts is how there's extra story to read about if you wish, assuming you have the other versions in your roster. So if you want even more context on Estelle and the Loving Hand, you can also check out the adventure story on the original 3-star Light Element Staff version. She's even featured in a couple of castle stories too. Despite being a welfare unit, Estelle is fairly powerful thanks to skills which can buff her own team and debuff the enemy. She also happens to be the first free-to-play wand unit, meaning she has the terrific skill damage co-ability like all other wands do. Estelle's stats are respectable, but not really her selling point. Her max HP is 766 and her max strength is 471, ranking 17th and 13th respectively among all 28 water units. But remember that these are stats at 50 nodes and that base strength isn't the only factor in total DPS. As a wand, Estelle can attack at range but suffers from lower defense than melee units as a trade-off. The game isn't very clear on this point, but it's something anyone who's played a few High Dragon Trials will observe. Ranged units have a base defense of 8 compared to a defense stat of 10 for melee units. This does mean in quests where defense matters, Estelle might need slightly more investment to live. Wand combos are, like most weapon types, backloaded in terms of SP gain. The final 2 parts of the 5-part basic combo grant the most SP, so it's a good idea to try and move around as little as possible when playing wands, or most weapons really. You want to ensure you're landing the final hits of your string. Otherwise, wands are pretty simple to play in that they usually want to land all 5 parts of their combo, Summer Estelle included. You can shorten the time before your next combo starts by charging a Force Strike as the previous combo ends, but canceling it before release. This technique is known as a failed Force Strike, and it saves a few frames of ending lag on the final animation of the combo for wands. Regarding the Force Strike, I would also say it's one of the weaker points to the wand weapon type. When multiple enemies are present, the auto-targeting can get messy pretty quickly and feel slow, especially versus shielded foes. Against one boss though, rolling between Force Strikes works pretty well to quickly cast them repeatedly. Anyway, let's focus in on Summer Estelle's skills and abilities now that we know how her basic stats and combos stack up. I alluded to her powerful skills earlier, and I do think these are at the core of her kit. Estelle's Ocean Fury has a relatively high total modifier of 880% water damage and a 40% chance to debuff enemy defense by 5% for 10 seconds once fully upgraded. This is comparable to the damage dealt by another water wand, Dragon Xander, but slightly less than the damage dealt by Lily's first skill, which has an aggregate modifier of 968%. In practice, however, Lily's skill is slower to cast and can even sometimes miss, so I wouldn't consider Estelle's to be too far off, even before the defense debuff is considered. And with that debuff, 40% of the time, this skill starts to compare very favorably. Furthermore, debuffing defense is extremely rare in the water element. Besides Summer Estelle, only Luther can do it on his second skill and with only a 30% base chance. Summer Estelle's second skill is Lifeguard Lift. Since this doesn't deal damage, there's a slight loss in value to her wand's co-ability, at least as applies to herself. However, despite that, this is another solid skill. Lifeguard Lift buffs the strength of water adventurers on the team by 15% for 15 seconds and removes stun. Obviously, this isn't going to be as good for multi-element content like the Defensive Battles mode from the Fire Emblem Lost Heroes crossover. And if you're running a mixed team, this also isn't quite as good in the Mercurial Gauntlet. But for your more standard quests, raids, and facility events, this seems like a fine skill. When you compare Lifeguard Lift's SP cost and duration to the buffs seen on Xainfried, Lara Noah, Nurse Eileen, and Dragalia Xander, Summer Estelle tends to win out. Of course, Estelle's buff is weaker, costlier, and narrower than Elisand's, but so is pretty much every other buff in the game. Plus, it's not like you must choose one or the other. The cleanse of Estelle's buff could even help Elisand since she lacks 100% built-in stun res. Summer Estelle's abilities are a bit more questionable than her skills in my opinion. Like most raid welfare units, Estelle has a class Bane. Demi-Human's Bane is in an odd spot where it's not super effective against any Void bosses except the easier Frost Hermit. Of course, it's super effective against the current raid boss Barbary, but the other place where I can see this shining is in facility events. Trolls, Cyclopes, Goblins, and Lizardmen are some of the more common and annoying threats in facility events, and all of these count as demi-humans. Estelle's second ability is stun res of 50%. This is pretty standard on raid welfare units, and it's not terribly hard to patch this up if you really feel you need to. For most stun-inducing content though, this should be good enough. Void Agni isn't especially punishing, and neither is Flame IO, nor is Barbary in the new raid. Finally, Estelle's third ability, unlockable if you promote her to a 5-star, is buff time of 20%. This transforms Estelle's Lifeguard Lift into an 18-second buff instead of a 15-second one. It's a nice effect, but Estelle's buff remains relatively slow to cast, so it's not exactly game-breaking. Estelle can charge her first skill in less than 2 full combos, while her second skill takes between 4 and 5 combos to use. I should also point out that buff time has no effect on the duration of debuffs either. And, well, that's all I have to say on Estelle's kit. The combination of buffing and debuffing is good, don't get me wrong. This is what puts her damage output over the top of other water wands like Lily and Dragalia Xander. However, I will also point out that Estelle's primary source of damage is her skills, specifically her first skill. That's what we'll want to emphasize boosting when it comes to build ideas. In the meantime, I'll show off some Estelle gameplay in the Splash of Adventure raid and versus Void Agni. First up, let's discuss dragons. Thanks to her massive 90% skill damage and 20% strength modifiers, Siren has crept up as best in class for water with a few caveats. First of all, Leviathan can inflict Bog. When this works, he should pose tough competition for Siren, considering Estelle has no innate way to bog enemies. Second, Leviathan has a fantastic dragon form. His basic attack string is weighed down by an extremely long third hit, but if you dash after his first 2 hits, you can avoid this altogether. The other caveat I'll mention is that Siren makes basic attacks and force strikes a lot weaker, but you can already tell that from her ability Aura. Thankfully, this isn't an especially big problem for the Wand class, since skill damage tends to be their main thing. And in fact, the skill damage co-ability works multiplicatively with Siren's skill damage Aura, making the pairing even better. If you don't have Siren though, rest assured that other water strength dragons can work just fine. Dragalia Jean is another lovely dragon who compares favorably to Leviathan when enemies can't be bogged. And Vojanoi is a fine 4-star dragon who's easy to max unbind as a budget option. I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking Estelle to High Brunhilde's trial, since she's ranged and lacks innate burn res, But if you really plan to do so, that's the one instance where I think you'd prefer to choose a mixed strength and HP dragon like Poseidon or High Mercury instead to meet the HP check. Next, let's talk weapons. The 5-star core weapon Ocean Monarch is the best all-around pick for Summer Estelle, especially so the more skill damage she has. It has an attack skill and the highest stats, but as usual, it's also the costliest option to craft using precious twinkling sand. The 4-star core wand has worse stats and a defense buff. I suppose this could work with Estelle's buff time passive if she's promoted, but there's no real context where that combo matters. Since Estelle doesn't have any inherent skill prep, it's also not like this combination can be used to cheese high dragon entry barriers either without sacrificing a Wormprint slot. For void weapons, Estelle has a lot of highly specific options. Spirit Breaker will generally be her best choice if you do decide to use her against High Brunhilde, because it will be hard to meet the HP check while running 2 burn res prints, and this has full HP equals defense built in. Sea Sovereign's Rule is a solid budget wand for the Mercurial Gauntlet if you're not able to craft the core wand. The skill prep helps Estelle get her buffs and debuffs started sooner, and the flurry shouldn't be interrupted if Estelle is AI. Tsunami Wing is another silver bullet that's good in wave content like facility events or Flame IO. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend a wand main for that type of content unless they have really big AoE nukes like Lily, Lucretia, or Maribel do. Skills like that are great, but wand basic attacks can feel lacking when it comes to waves of foes. Then there's Frost Cane as another void weapon which has Scorching Air Res. You can craft this against Void Agni, but it's not necessary since a wand like Estelle can just stay outside the Scorching Air range. It's unfortunate, but there's no skill resistance Penetrator Water Wand. Finally, the last void weapon of note is the Second Scream. This weapon gives Estelle access to Dull Res and Thaumian's Bane, so its main use is versus the Steel Golem. Carefully dodging in that fight and the overall low difficulty makes skipping Dull Res fine though. Last up for builds, let's go over Wormprints. Estelle can use the tried and true setup of most wand units, Resounding Rendition plus Flash of Genius. This is her best pairing in a vacuum, and so long as she's not your lead unit, the combo count based strength appears to work fine in the Mercurial Gauntlet. Player-controlled units have their combo reset upon using a helper, so it'd be best to leave her to the AI. If you feel strongly that Estelle needs stun res, she can access it through Saintly Delivery, a limited time print released last winter which also provides skill damage. There are also other weaker options for stun res available as well. Again though, stun res isn't crucial. As a wand, Estelle should be able to dodge most stun-inducing attacks. But Indelible Summer is also fine, just as a safety net if you're really worried about this affliction. If you wish to use Summer Estelle against High Brunhilde, however, then afflictions, specifically Burn, will pose a more serious problem. In that case, absent Thaniel, who knows how to heal flammables, you can use Fireside Gathering plus Beauty's Secret to completely resist burning. Just make sure you have some extra HP or defense through your dragon, weapon, augments, or teammates' co-abilities. And speaking of teammates, well, Estelle's Lifeguard Lift only works on water teammates, so that's one immediate consideration. Estelle also wants to cast Lifeguard Lift on cooldown since it's a buff, so it's not likely she'll be holding it just to cleanse stun. Therefore, I'll focus on stun res water teammates. Two of the immediate standouts are Karina and Xander, since the skill damage on both of their first skills scales by 5% for each buff they have. Karina also has the defense co-ability which can help shore up Estelle's weaker defense stat. Both of these units happen to also have 3 attacking skills with their preferred 5-star core weapons, so they benefit greatly from Summer Estelle's skill damage co-ability. Finally, for competition, Summer Estelle holds up really well. I already alluded to the other two water wands earlier when comparing the damage on each of their first skills. Lily is a natural 5-star and Dragonule Xander is a 4-star who was seasonal and isn't currently summonable. So Summer Estelle certainly has an edge in availability. And as it turns out, she also edges out both other water wands in simulated damage thanks to the team support she provides. The gap is narrow, so it's not a guarantee she'll be best, but she's certainly very competitive at a minimum. In modes like HBH where burn res matters, Lily will still be preferred though, since she can opt for much stronger builds than Summer Estelle is able to. Of course, there's one other competitor to all other wand units, and that's Galacleo. If your main purpose for using a wand is to provide the skill damage co-ability, like in the Mercurial Gauntlet, then you can reasonably use Galacleo instead of Summer Estelle, even against flame enemies, and come out ahead. You could also run the two together depending on your other options. Even though Galacleo won't receive Estelle's buff, Cleo's own buffing power more than compensates for that slight loss in Estelle's synergy. As of now, Galacleo is simply the best wand to max out and use in MG, regardless of element. It's unfortunate to see such a powerful welfare wand like Summer Estelle release right after another game-breaking wand unit, particularly when the latter is so coveted and exclusive. But comparisons aside, Summer Estelle is still a wonderful adventurer. She ranks among the better welfare units in the game, with her DPS being below Botan and Elisanne, but comparable if not better than Xuansong and Alex. All of these comparison units are in elements with access to the recently buffed skill damage dragons too, so it's not like Summer Estelle is an outlier just due to Siren alone. Indeed, one of these units, Elisanne, doesn't even prefer to run Siren. Furthermore, these comparison welfare units, and Summer Estelle herself, also perform very well even compared to rarer gacha adventurers. I'm glad to see a wand as strong as Estelle enter the free-to-play arsenal, and I have no doubt she'll be helpful to many players looking to power up their water teams. It's hard to recommend taking her all the way to 50 nodes in a Galacleo world, but I could still see Summer Estelle warranting a promotion. She's awesome for the current raid and the Mercurial Gauntlet, decent in void battles like Agni and the Steel Golem, but much weaker against Brunhilde. And, well, that's about all I have to say on Summer Estelle. It was a joy to receive Estelle for free as part of the Splash of Adventure event, and I think her role in the story was cute if a bit tropey. More to the point of this video though, Summer Estelle is a strong, standout welfare adventurer, and she's one of the best units to provide the wand's co-ability to a dedicated water team, second only to Galacleo. She's only good in one aspect of the current endgame, not all, but I still think Summer Estelle is worth a look. If you aren't riding the Galacleo wave just yet, then Estelle may help you turn the tide against Roy III. Of course, I'd love to know what you think about Summer Estelle in the comments below. Do you agree with my analysis? Have anything else to add or any questions? Either way, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.